Hello po, STEM student. A blessed day to everybody. Tayo po ay nasa bagong semester po, which is nasa bagong subject din po tayo about the disaster readiness and risk reduction. So this subject po is a prerequisite subject almost ng subject nating Earth Science. Nagdaan po tayo sa subject Earth Science last semester. So ngayon po dadako po tayo sa bago po nating subject, which is the DRRR or DRQ in short. Ang mga lesson po na gugugulin po natin for our daily living po, for our daily lives po, na alam po natin how to prepare, how to be getting ready po when the hazard or one disaster strike sa ating po mga. Hayaan po natin tayo po dumako po about the concept of hazard, concept of disaster. Or yung first lesson po natin, kung makikita niyo po sa module, or sa sim number 1 po natin is about hazard and disaster. Hayaan po natin panoorin muna po yung patungkol po about sa ating pong lesson about disaster.
Disasters create large humanitarian and development challenges. The frequency and severity of disasters have increased over the last few years, also as a result of climate change. More than 226 million people are affected by disasters every year. More than 680,000 people died in earthquakes between 2000 and 2010, mainly due to poorly constructed buildings. Since 1980, drought and associated famine have claimed nearly 558,000 lives and affected more than 1.6 billion people. Cyclones, hurricanes and typhoons affect 37 million people. It is thus important to keep in mind that disasters are not natural. They only occur when people lack preparedness or the ability to cope with hazards. We can use the following formula. While education systems are greatly affected by disasters, they are also part of the solution. Education on disaster risk reduction can provide life-saving information and skills that protect children and young people during and after disasters. Education has a vital role to play in preparing communities and building disaster-resilient societies and safe lives. Schools should be built to be disaster-proof. In the case of Japan, this saved many children who survived because they were in school. Disaster risk reduction should be introduced into school curricula and programs. This will ensure that learners understand the causes and consequences of disasters and know how to act when a disaster strikes. Learners should also participate, for example, in mapping school hazards, risks and vulnerabilities around them, and in developing school disaster preparation plans. This gives them the opportunity to learn by doing, as well as testing their newly acquired knowledge in practice. The entire learning community should work on safety measures in preparation for a disaster. It is our hope that as many countries will integrate disaster risk reduction into the planning and construction of their facilities, the management of their schools, as well as in their curricula and programs. UNESCO provides the tools for integrating disaster risk reduction into schools. Let's use these tools and get active today.
Okay po, so nakita po natin for our video clip po na nagkakaroon po tayo ng acknowledging po sa ilang bagay po na bakit po ang disaster readiness and risk reduction or the DRQ ay nagawa po siyang subject ngayon. Dati po kasi hindi po siya subject, no? Dati po siya po ay ginagawa lang pong bagay na latter part ng ilang mga science subject. How to prepare when the disaster strike sa ating pong pang-araw-araw na buhay. Mapa-fire hazard, earthquake hazard, unpredictable, which is the very point na kailangan po natin pagdating po sa mga bagay po about the hazardous. Okay po? One thing lang po na pwede ko pong ma-share at pwede nyo pong ma-take down notes. Meron po tayo about the concept of hazard. Hazard and disaster po ang ating pong lesson today. No? When we talk about the concept of hazard, we have three major things. We have three major meaning to think more about hazards. Sabi po ng Burton et al. 1978, o dito po, Burton et al. 1978, is about, ano lang po three thing lang po or three meaning about the hazard. This is reference idea or to support idea about the lesson or topic na hazard po. No? Ang sabi po ng Burton et al. 1978, that hazard is those elements of the physical environment is harmful to man and caused by forces extraneous. Pangalawa ho, ang sabi naman po sa Standard Australia, year 2000, no, para siyang mga reference ng po to, no? Standard Australia, year 2000, ang sabi po that a hazard is a source of potential harm or a situation with the potential to cause loss. Pagdating naman po sa isang, pangatlo po natin, which is the ADPC or the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, na sabi that the hazard is a natural event that has the potential to cause harm or loss. So titingnan po natin yung mga ibig sabihin po ng hazard dun sa tatlong reference idea natin, to Burton et al. 1978, the Standard Australia 2000, at ng ADPC o the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, ay halos iisa yung tugon nila. Iisa yung angkop nila about the word or about in the meaning of hazard. Pero tingnan po natin on the screen, no? Ang sabi po dito, a hazard is a threat, no? A future source of danger, no? Ang ganda po noong pangalawang sentence, a future source of danger. Na parang alam po natin na everyday, hindi natin alam kung anong pwede mangyari. Alam natin knowledgeable about earth science, about the different characteristic of earth. Alam natin what is the earth subsystem. Alam natin that we have to think that this is very important kasi buhay ang nakasalalay. Buhay po ang nakasalalay. Alam natin, matalino nga tayo sa math, matalino tayo sa English, pero matalino ba tayo when it comes to life, sa buhay na usapin? Diba? Dapat dito, matalino rin po tayo. Kahit sabihin natin na malit na bagay lang yan, kayang-kaya ko na. Kayang-kaya ko ng panindigan kung paano ako mabuhay sa when the disaster strikes sa buhay. Kaya kailangan natin yung yung pinaka-flexible moment when you hear a disaster. Ang sabi mo dito, it has the potential to cause harm to people, human activity, property, or environment. When you hear people, is even cause death, injury, disease, or stress. Human activity, pwede po ang potential to cause harm to human activity because of the educational, economic. Ito po, pwedeng pasok natin yung tinutukoy po nating pandemic ngayon. No? It's a kind of a disaster. No? Talaga naapektuhan po yung educational system natin, the economic system, the property. Ito po, pwede ito mangyari sa mga bagyo, earthquake, no, sa fire, the property damage, economic loss of environment. No, makita po natin na napakainam po na tayo po lahat ay maging handa when you hear a word hazard. No, a hazard event is a physical parameter of the hazard event that causes the harm. Mapapansin po natin, no, dito sa bagay po na patungkol po sa ating patungkol po dito sa ating next slide po natin. Ito po. Magnitude is an important characteristic for analyzing hazards since only occurrence exceeding some defined level of magnitude are considered hazardous. The level of harm is governed by the magnitude of hazard, frequency of hazard, and the intensity of an impact point. Alam po natin when you hear a multiple hazard. When more than one hazard impacts the same area, there arise a multiple hazard situation. For example, ng multiple hazard po natin, nagkaroon po ng earthquake. Afterwards, merong mga pangyayaring pwede mangyari pa. Aftershocks, tsunami, diba po? Yun yung multiple hazard. Pero, meron din po tayong tinatawag na secondary hazard. Ano po yung secondary hazard? The secondary hazard, 1:1 lang. Halimbawa ho, pwedeng sabihin natin hydrometeorological hazard. Typhoon, karoon po ng bagyo. So it's a kind of hazard. And then ano po yung secondary hazard niya? Storm surge. No? Pwede na po iyon, 1:1. Yun po, pwede natin sabihin siyang secondary hazard. Pero pag multiple hazard, pwedeng ito mangyari. Earthquake. No? After ng earthquake, nagkaroon ng tinatawag natin tsunami, aftershocks, pwede magkaroon ng property damage, pwede magkaroon ng pwede magkaroon ng tinatawag natin mga fire, yung mga sunog, kasi nga nagkaroon ng mga leakage. So bagay po na makita po natin pagdating sa ating tinatawag na hazard. Okay po? Next po natin, ito po. Classification of hazard. Are hazards natural? Ayun po yung tanong natin, no? Pwedeng sabihin po natin na masasagot po dun sa tatlong punto na meron po tayo. There are many different ways of classifying hazard. One is to consider the extent to which hazards are natural. When you hear natural hazards, such as earthquake or floods, arise from purely natural process in the environment. No? Pag sinabing natural, very natural lang. Okay po? Pag quasi-natural hazard, ito yung medyo halo. No? Halo na po siya when it comes to human activities and natural processes. But doon sa pangatlo, it's purely man-made hazard or human activity hazard, just as toxicity of pesticide, accidental release of chemicals. Yun yung pinakasasabihin natin man-made hazard. No? Now, meron po tayo nabanggit dito si Hewitt and Burton, year 1971, that itemized a variety of factors relating to damaging geophysical events which were not process-specific, including the areal extent of damage zone, intensity of impact at point, duration of impact at a point, rate of onset of the event, and predictability of the event. Ito po yung basihan nila. Ito yung process-specific na basihan po ng mga ilang bagay patungkol po sa tinatawag nating hazard. Now, meron po tayong mapapansin na different types of hazard. No? Meron po tayong atmospheric, either in single element or combined element. Meron po tayong hydrologic, geologic, biologic, and technologic. So mapapansin po natin yan po yung mga bagay na pwedeng sabihin natin paghandaan. Okay po? When you hear atmospheric, it's a single element. Ito po yung mga sample niya. Nakita po natin sa illustration. Excess rainfall, freezing rain, hail, heavy snowfalls, high wind speed, extreme temperatures. Pag combined element naman po, ito yung mga hurricanes, blaze storm, thunderstorm, blizzard, tornadoes, or heat and cold stress. No? Hydrologic, ito po yung floods, river and coastal, wave action, drought, tagtiyot, no? Rapid glacier advance. Geologic po, ito yung tinatawag natin landslide, mudslide, avalanche, earthquake, volcanic eruption, rapid sediment movement. Sa biologic naman po, ito yung from epidemic to pandemic, no? Yung nangyayari po sa atin, epidemic in humans, in plants and animals. Locusts, ito po yung mga balang o para mga insekto pong umaatake po sa mga palayan, yun po yung locust. Technology is a transport accident, industrial explosion in cars, accidental release of toxic chemicals, nuclear accidents, collapse, and public buildings. So yun po yung mga ilang bagay po patungkol sa hazard po natin. Nakita po natin kanina kung ano po yung meron sa formula po when you hear a kind of disaster. Nakita po natin yung formula po na yun, no? Yung kalalabasan po kasi ng subject po natin, kasi po, this is kind of hazard pala. Na pwedeng sumagi sa isip natin na pwede itong lumabas na tinatawag natin disaster. No? Bagatin ko lang po ilang bagay po patungkol sa disaster. Take down notes na po ito. No? Basic concept of disaster. The disaster is the term disaster, owes in origin to the French word désastre. Na ang ibig sabihin po ng desastre, D-E-S-A-S-T-R-E, desastre. Na ang ibig sabihin daw po from the French word desastre, which means a combination of two words, des meaning bad, and aster meaning star. Meaning to say that the disaster or disaster, thus the term refers to bad or evil star. Okay po? So it's a serious disruption in the functioning of the community or society, causing widespread materials, economic, social, or environmental losses which exceed the ability of the affected society to cope using its own resources. No? Another idea po pagdating po sa disaster, a disaster is a result from combination of hazard, vulnerability, and insufficient capacity or insufficient manageability or capacity, or to measure to reduce the potential chances of risk. And a disaster happens when hazard impacts on the vulnerable population and causes damage, casualty, and disruption. No? Pwedeng sabihin po natin na vulnerability plus the hazard, pwede siyang mag-result ng disaster. Pero ang target muna po natin matutunan ngayon is what is hazard, what is the concept of hazard, and a little concept of disaster. Kasi po next meeting po, next lesson po natin is about the vulnerability. Doon tutukuyin po natin anong mga potential when it comes to population or when it comes to place na pwede po natin matukoy when it comes to result a disaster. Okay? So, yun po yung lesson po natin about an hazard and disaster. Okay? So, banggitin ko lang po yung formula po kanina, no, na-show naman po sa isang sa video clip po natin. Disaster risk is equal to hazard times the vulnerability over the capacity or manageability. Yung capacity or manageability is the degree to which the community can intervene or manage a hazard in order to reduce its potential impact. So, dito po, disaster risk is equal to hazard times or multiplied to vulnerability over the capacity or the manageability. Okay? So, yun po yung lesson po natin ngayon. Tukuyin lang po natin about the concept of hazard and the concept of disaster. Next meeting po, pag-uusapan po natin ang vulnerability. Thank you so much po. God bless you all STEM student. Nga po ay marami po kayo natutunan.